Good evening, one and all, and once again, welcome to the Wednesday live stream. I still haven't come up with a good enough name to call it, but maybe the Wednesday live stream will just stick, as they always say. So, welcome, one and all to this evening. We've got some good stuff lined up for you this evening. Well, today I'm quite excited because we're actually going back to the roots of this channel in a way, in some cases. Some of you who might have followed this channel long enough or maybe searched my back catalogue long enough will see. I used to talk very heavily about sort of the alternative industry out there that is quite full of quacks and nonsense. We used to heavily go after things like Gerson therapy, which basically used to say, hey, have a coffee enema, not just one coffee enema, but 6 coffee enemas a day, and somehow that'll cure your cancer. But today we're going to do a bit of a both, because Russell Brand interviewed someone called Vandana Shiva, and she is very, very big in India and in certain circles, certainly the anti-GMO circles, but don't worry, we're getting into her in a bit. That, of course, it also gives us the opportunity to dip once again back into the world of Brand and his, brand of nonsense. But I think before we do go diving into that, I think best of all to give you a little treat. And I think some of you may or may not know what is already coming. But needless to say, it's going to be quite a good one. I think you'll quite enjoy it. But let's say hello to those in chat first before we begin. So get your hellos in now. So, Midas Ken, greetings from Dayton, Ohio. Ohio. So greetings to you. Colin Thompson, greetings from New York. Prinny Bird, greetings from Oregon. Pedals, good evening all, and Broussard El Tors. Chatty Rat, good evening from the east coast of Ireland. So good evening, one and all. Chatty Rat, I suppose you've seen my little that I found on, I think it was on Twitter. I think Max originally shared it about the IUP, the Ireland United Party. That's quite insane. It's quite insane. Do vengeance. Who, what, where? Who, what, where, indeed. And of course, Simon. Yep, welcome to you, and welcome to Midas Ken as well. This isn't Minecraft. Well, welcome to you one and all. And of course, please remember to hit that like and share button while you're there. Share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it in Discord chats, and wherever else you share your videos that you like to all and sundry. And of course, the like button as well will help out massively. Helps with all that algorithmical stuff. So let's get in it today. So I did promise before we dive into our main story this evening, let's first of all dip over into the wonderful land of Jeff Taylor. Yes, my friends, we're going over to Jeff, because one of the things that you've certainly seen recently, since certainly last weekend, the Brexiteers got into a bit of a tizzy, mainly, of course, with the queues at Dover. And of course, who better to sum up the feelings of the Brexiteers than none other than, of course, Jeff Taylor. Who better not to cover? Oh, Paul, good evening. Hello from London. Good to see you, London, reporting in. Yep, it's protocol time. Let's go diving into this then. Hang on, I think this will be better. Yeah, here we go. That'll be better. All right. And we've always got to remember we've got to speed Jeff up because he speaks so slowly.
Hello there. Massive tailbacks at the Port of Dover and the Channel Tunnel. So you know the usual suspects will try and blame Brexit.
Already. Yeah, already. What do we blame, Jeff? What do we blame? You already know what, if you've been following this this story as it developed, you already know who Jeff's going to blame. So you already know who he's going to blame. But yeah, needs to say, it's certainly not their fault. And as the French, even themselves, did say, look, you're the ones who chose to leave. It's not our fault. We're only doing what you asked us to do. So yeah, Jeff the funeral curtains tailor. Though he hasn't got that up this time. He's out and about somewhere this time.
Yes, as the queues build up at Dover and this end of the Channel Tunnel, you know that the same old fingers will point at Brexit as the offender. However, the queues at the Channel Tunnel were caused by an incident on the M20 where someone sadly died, forcing the police to cut off access to the tunnel. And the port problems are being caused by a failure of French border staff to turn up for work.
So that's a new one. That's certainly a new one. That's certainly new. I don't think we can actually. Can we verify that? Let's see if we can actually verify that. So what was it? Did he say M20?
The queues at the Channel Tunnel were caused by an incident on the M20 where someone sadly died.
So let's have a look at this. So yes, there actually was a crash on the M20. It happened just after 10 o'clock between motorway junctions 11 and 12. However, it was only closed for an hour. And not only that, according to the Kent Online, which I'm reading this story from, there were already delays. So the delays were already there. So once again, Jeff telling a bit of a porky pie there. Certainly about that incident being severe enough to add to this chaos down at Dover. By the looks of it, again, according to official reporting from Kent Online, that junction was only closed. And even to the police were already saying by that point, according to there was already the queues forming. So looks like not a serious enough incident to cause this chaos at Dover.
The police to cut off access to the tunnel, and the port problems are being caused by a failure of French border staff to turn up for work.
So again, this was the big one. This is the big one that all the Brexiteers like Jeff were going around saying. This isn't a Brexit problem. This is down to the fact that these French customs officials have not turned up for work. Okay. Where's the evidence of that? Because if you followed Sky News over that weekend and you followed Simon Clark, who's the travel expert, went down there himself and saw all the stations were fully manned, I've got more reason to believe him than certainly Jeff and most of the Brexiteers who were basically saying, oh, it's those French customs officials not turning up for work. Where's your evidence that they didn't turn up for work? you know, those queues were very much caused. And oh, by the way, it should be noted that Jeff has released another video, which maybe we might watch after this. I don't know. Depends. We'll see how far we've gone through this. So his argument is the French didn't turn up for work. This has somehow caused these queues, but where's your evidence that they didn't turn up for work? And if they, quote, didn't turn up for work, and one of the things in Jeff in his new video is saying that there are no of these queues anymore. Well, that was because that weekend in particular, if you were listening to what was being said last weekend, Jeff, even Simon Clark, the travel expert, who is its job to write about travel, was saying that was the busiest weekend for travel in the UK and was certainly going to be a very busy one for Dover. Why? Because that was the first weekend of the school holidays. What do you think is going to happen? And here's the thing. Traffic has increased in and around Dover. There is, if you go on their website, they'll say, oh yes, things have calmed down since last weekend. There's still some trouble, plan ahead, get through. But that was due to volume of traffic and the first time. So I fail to see how it is the French at fault here, Jeff. You've certainly got no evidence to back up your claim that they didn't turn up for work. Also, you've got to also realize the government 2 years ago now turned down a massive investment into the Port of Dover to expand these facilities for checking. The government turned them down because Dover has been built for roll-on, roll-off traffic. And of course, you can't do that anymore. You've got to stamp, you've got to check the passports. That's apparently what Jeff will probably tell us. That's what he wanted. So, but yeah, let's continue, shall we?
That seems to have exasperated the port's chief executive, Doug Bannister, who told Sky News, the cause of it is French immigration controls. This is causing major disruption. French border controls are not properly staffed. To be let down in the way that we have with inadequate resources and slow processes through the border is just immensely frustrating. We've shared in granular detail on an hour-by-hour basis the amount of traffic we were anticipating, so it was completely known what we needed to have in place at the French border. The French being...
Interesting quote there, but I have a feeling that Jeff, again, may not be telling the full truth. So let's see, just go back. Let's see if we can't find that full quote.
Access to the tunnel. And the port problems are being caused by a failure of French border staff to turn up for work. Something that seems to have exasperated the port's chief executive, Doug Bannister.
Right, let's go. Doug Bannister over. Wait, I've got one here from 4 days ago from LBC. Dover port boss blames Brexit for delays. I don't think Jeff has shown us a true quote there. I don't think Jeff has been honest, because I can't find that original quote. And one of the first ones I have found is from the CEO of Dover telling LBC that the problems at the port are the cause of Brexit. So Jeff, I think, unless he can actually source that quote, I think he might actually be lying. Yep, there's a lot of people piled on here. Yeah, that's quite interesting. I can't find that quote. I think Jeff might have made that up. I'm looking at his Twitter feed now. I can't find it on there. Nope. Unless Jeff can prove otherwise, or unless someone can show me otherwise, I think that quote Jeff has shown was made up. Or he's attributing it to the wrong person, because I can't seem to find that quote online. And given the fact that one of the ones I have found instantly was the CEO of Dover on LBC telling LBC that the problems they are facing are Brexit because of Brexit, Jeff is wrong there.
Who told Sky News, "The cause of it is French immigration controls. This is causing major disruption. French border controls are not properly staffed. To be let down in the way that we have with..."
Again, I am massively questioning this quote. He said Sky News, but I don't know. Let's have a look. Let's have another look. I'm managed to Dover Sky News. See what we've got here. So I've got a video of him here. Let's play this. Hang on, let's stop sharing them. Let's share this instead. Maybe it's this. So this is the guy who Jeff's talking about. Let's see what he's got to say on here.
Say that I am really, listen, first of all, I need to say that I am really very sorry to all those travelers that have headed out this morning, to the truck drivers, the local community in Dover. We should not be in this position. We have been planning for this day, this morning, for the last several months. We have installed in the port new infrastructure to be able to handle this. We've trained up more people. We have shared traffic levels by hour for the whole summer with the appropriate authorities to make certain that we had enough resource in place to handle it. We had warned that if we didn't have enough resource in place this morning, starting from about 4 o'clock, we would be in this situation, and it is highly regrettable that we find ourselves here.
Interesting that. That doesn't sound like what Jeff was saying. I think Jeff has been very sneaky there. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Midas Ken. Thank you from Ohio, USA. Thank you very much there, Ken. Yeah, I think Jeff has been rather sneaky there. You can recognize some of the quotes from what Jeff was saying there, but I think he's stitched stuff together there. I really think he has. Trust seeks to blame France for pulling queues at Dover. Declares critical incident. Also take blame. Okay, so okay. Pott said woefully inadequate. French staffing was to blame for major disruption. French police said that they were not to blame for the delays, and an unexpected technical incident was the cause. Promised to work closely with the British counterparts to handle high traffic over the coming days. Predicted traffic volumes have been shared with the French authorities in granular detail as being prepared for the summer holiday season. So actually, this is quite interesting because this is what the port has said. So this isn't. So Jeff has actually put words in the mouth of the CEO of Dover, which they have not said. That's very interesting because this statement is coming from the port, not the CEO. That's interesting. So he's putting words in people's mouth there. That's very bad form, Jeff. We're deeply frustrated with the resources at France border overnight. This morning has been woefully inadequate. Again, that's where he got the quote from, but again, it's not from that. We know the resources is finite, but the popularity of Dover is not a surprise. So, yeah, and then let's go on to here. Where was the LBC one? I'm sure there was an LBC one. Hang on. LBC. Yeah. Dover port boss blames Brexit for delays. So there he is. Dover port boss blames Brexit for delays as he explains passport checks and stamps. So, interestingly enough, so this is actually quite sneaky what Jeff has done here. What he has done, either willingly or not willingly, I don't know. It's Jeff. He might have done it intentionally, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He has attributed a quote to something the CEO of the Port of Dover has said, which he himself has not said, as we've just shown you there. That Sky News piece is referring to did not come from him. That was a statement from the Port of Dover. We are now going to go over a piece just to show you from LBC of the CEO of the Port of Dover saying that no, it is Brexit to blame for these delays because of checks and stamps. So let's watch this then, shall we?
Well, what we have done, I mean, recognizing that we are in a post-Brexit environment, which means the transaction times through the borders are going to take longer because the passports need to be checked, they need to be stamped, etc. So what we did in response to that is come up with a rather detailed plan for our traffic volumes throughout the entire summer. But we've also installed new interim border authority kiosks to be able to operate from and handle the business on the busiest days.
So while the short-term issue is about staffing levels on the French side, the wider issue, and this is what the French are saying, the wider issue here, and you just touched on it, is Brexit. There are more staff needed because there are more checks, and there are more checks because we're no longer in the EU. Is that your assessment too?
Yeah, but that is absolutely true. And indeed, that was a primary planning assumption that we all worked towards for coming up with the summer plan, because we knew what the checks were going to be like. We've been operating this way since we left the European Union. Now, what was different before is that when we had lower traveler numbers, tourist numbers, because of the COVID, then our entire Border Authority Plaza could be dedicated towards the freight. Now, with the increasing number of tourists, and indeed because there's more people per vehicle in the tourists than there is for the trucks, it is taking longer to get through. But those were indeed planning assumptions that we had for the summertime.
As given that is the case, given this is about Brexit, those checks are not going away anytime soon. This is something that people travelling through the Port of Dover are going to have to come to expect and prepare for.
Well, that's why we've come up with the plan that we have come, because we knew that this summer was going to see a return of tourists because we've had the COVID restrictions lifted, of course, right? So this is something that we planned for the summer. But then strategically, you're right. We do require greater investments in the port, for the infrastructure in the port, and we've got a plan for that. And we require greater infrastructure throughout Kent to be able to manage the traffic on the road network leading into both ourselves and Eurotunnel.
Are you saying, Doug, at the moment you're not getting the resources you need from government to stop this sort of thing happening? That politicians need to pull a finger out, frankly?
Well, actually, to address that question, we've been getting great support from central governments.
You said you need more resources.
Well, what we need to right now, what we need is to make certain that we resource according to the plan. But then also strategically, we do need, and this is a couple of years worth of investments that are required. Strategically, we need to get those investments unlocked and underway.
Should we have planned for this much earlier after the referendum vote? There were lots of warnings about travel chaos. It's 6 years on now, and yet we're now seeing it materialize.
Well, and the answer to that is, we've been operating in this way for a couple of years now. So we did know about this, and we put all the plans in place pursuant to the increased immigration checks that are required as a result of us leaving the European Union. Now,
I think you get the point. I don't think I need to play any more of that. I think you get the point. I think you get the point. I think you get the point there. I think the CEO of the Port of Dover has spelt it out. So Jeff there, and this quote, wrongly attributed to the CEO. You've got the CEO on LBC right here saying the problems at the Port of Dover are Brexit related. So Jeff is either A, not fully read the article and not understood that that quote hasn't come from the CEO, and either he's done that by mistake or he's done it willfully. I'll let my audience be the judge of what has happened there. We'll let you be the judge. But anyway, we'll finish off the of Jeff's video.
French border. The French being their usual helpful selves, it seems. Maybe they're all down on the French beaches assisting and waving the dinghies off or something. Anyway, all this lack of French personnel has resulted in some ferries leaving Dover just about empty of passengers. But the dinghies coming the other way will be full, won't they? But isn't it strange how any means of travel, whether it be by car, boat or aeroplane, is getting harder by the day, caused by a myriad of new problems sprouting up from nowhere? Well, harder if you're one of the hoi polloi, that is.
Yeah. All this travel chaos suddenly sprouting up from nowhere. I wonder where it could have come from. Yes, all this travel chaos. All this travel chaos just springing up from nowhere. Nowhere, he tells you. You know, do not look at the Brexit behind the curtain. Yeah. I
very much doubt the great and good are seeing many queues. And the high cost of petrol and diesel is forcing people to fill their cars less. Well, the poor drivers anyway. This will, of course, mean fewer driven miles, so the globalist will be so very pleased. People are also reportedly buying less food because they can't afford it. Once again, the poor people, that is. Another box ticked on a globalist's to-do list. And how much will this reduced consumption?
Why on earth would a globalist be upset at that? Because I think if you were a globalist, you would want people to travel. After all, you were the ones telling us that immigration was a bad thing and that they wanted immigration. People not buying things, probably, I think, against, a globalist agenda, maybe, Jeff. I think... Oh, this is going to be quite funny to predict now, because I wonder if now Jeff isn't getting as much traction from his Brexit sort of related videos as he used to. I wouldn't be surprised, because I think many on the right wing do not want to acknowledge or at least talk about Brexit anymore, because I think even they're starting to realize that Brexit's a colossal failure, and even they cannot hide from it for too much longer. Hence why he said, oh, all this travel chaos just springing up from nowhere. And now it seems that Jeff may be sort of taking the road down into conspiracy town, talking about the globalists and the elite. So how long, folks, do you think it will be before Jeff goes full conspiracy theorist? I'm not thinking it might be too long before he does that. But maybe we'll have to see. We'll have to keep an eye on how Jeff goes.
Consumption by the masses really help the planet. But little by little, our lives are becoming smaller as we travel less and enjoy life less, all heading for that bleak, miserable, globalist, eco-fascist future where ordinary humans are mere factory fodder to be controlled, while our psychopathic and narcissistic global leaders live it up and laugh at us.
Oh dear.
factory fodder to be controlled.
Oh dear. Oh dear. So, did anyone catch the time what I just said there? Because I said, gee, I wonder how long it will be before Jeff goes full on conspiracy theorist. Yeah. Yeah, David, didn't take long at all. It didn't take long at all. Yeah. Cathode OG as well. Yeah. Again, Ben, yeah, I called it. Yeah. Yeah, didn't take long. So, yeah, David, yeah. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Why is it? And I don't know about you, but I always notice a lot of these right-wing commentators, sooner or later, always like to either flirt with conspiracy or they just like to dip into the pool. Seems to be how it is most of the time. Oh, and yeah, you are right. Yeah, you are right there, Mike. Yeah. Yeah, describing Brexit and all his friends, self-inflicted misery in about 28 seconds. Yeah. That's a Brexiteer, ladies and gentlemen. This is a hardcore Brexiteer. They're not all like this, but that's what a Brexit supporter is normally like, a hardcore one. But yeah. Yeah. So Jeff there going full conspiracy theorist. So I'm glad you've enjoyed that, because now we're on to go into some pain. I'm gonna go on to some pain. Oh, but I think first, before we do that, we're gonna go over to another guy who, again, certainly a lot bigger on me than YouTube, called Myers Power. I don't know if you can see it there. It's quite small. That's the biggest I can get it. Sorry. So Miles, for a number of years now, has been very, very much involved in sort of the science version of YouTube. He is himself a scientist. I can't exactly remember what his sort of degree is in. But I know he is a scientist and does work as a scientist. I just can't remember exactly what his science does now. He's done a lot of debunking of conspiracy theories over the years. He's even, again, like myself, covered Gerson therapy and the quack nonsense that they put out. But before we go into Russell Brand's video, I think it's worth going over this article quickly, because the person we are about to cover, or at least see cover, called Vandana Shiva, she is a complete and utter psychopath. And I am genuinely not kidding that she wants to go back and just discount what we call the green revolution, or the agricultural revolution, which took place back in the Industrial Revolution. So, history lesson for all of you at this moment in time: pre-Industrial Revolution, every town, every city was surrounded by farmland. And very, very much so, all these farmlands, even throughout Europe, very, very much was subsistence farming. Any extra would be taken, given to your lord, and that lord would again take it, use it himself, put it on the market. Eventually, as we obviously move into sort of more Industrial Revolution times, the lords start to buy up more land and start to sort of create bigger estates and sort of use the again, the surrounding people to sort of to pay them to farm those big estates. And this is what happens as you sort of, again, move to a more sort of industrialized society. Again, I was in Bruges, 2 months ago now. And if you look at pictures of medieval Bruges, you see the city ringed with its walls. It's got big windmills on it, because, again, you use wind power to sort of drive the grain that would, grind the wheat, and then that would, again, turn it into flour. That's how they did it. And you had to get food, or at least the food, as close as possible. Because back then, even then, transporting food, unless it was very much something that wasn't non-perishable or something that could last quite a long time, like grain, was very, very hard. Very, very hard. Actually, the only one of the exceptions they actually had pre this was ancient Rome. Ancient Rome relied on the grain shipments from Egypt. It was very, very reliant on the grain shipments from Egypt, to a point where you had, if there was a shipment coming in late, it was even said, people in Rome could almost starve out for a day if these shipments were not coming in sort of regularly. So even then, it was grain. It was that sort of very non-perishable stuff, and anything sort of fresh or anything like that, anything that had a short shelf life, once it was picked from the fields or the gardens or wherever, had to be eaten very, very relatively quickly. Obviously we're talking, ancient Middle Ages stuff could not be, preserved for that long. Yes, there were obviously preserving methods. Normally, you dip the meat in salt, and there were all these, again, there were methods, but nothing to the extent that we can sort of preserve food now. So Vandana Shiva wants to take all agriculture back to that point. So no fertilizers, absolutely 0% fertilizers. Apparently, instead, we need to rely on worms. Yeah. And that the seeds themselves need to be, quote, dechemicalized. I don't know exactly what she means sort of by that. And that we shouldn't be using any type of genetically modified seed, which, if you know anything about human history or anything like that, you know that if you look at wheat, how it used to look centuries ago looks entirely different to the wheat we do now. Look at bananas, how bananas used to look before we sort of domesticated them now. Watermelons is a fantastic example, by the way. I saw that on Vosh's stream where he sort of covered this. Strawberries, another example of a food that we have sort of transformed using genetically modification, by the way, because let's put it plainly, this selective breeding that we did for, wheat, all the food that we sort of have now has been done by selective breeding. That is genetic modification, And of course, she, like most people, indulges in the sort of Frankenfood scare stories you hear now. Oh my God, scientists create an apple that glows in the dark, or something like that. Those instances are incredibly rare when that happens. Incredibly rare. And if we are to continue as a species, we need to use genetic modification to be able to grow more food. It's just that simple. but not according to Vandana, because she wants to drag all the world back to a point where even using machinery, yes, even using machinery is against her credo. So that means no tractors. Farmers would have to go back to plows pulled by, horses or oxen or donkeys, depending what I suppose you can get your hand on. This is the kind of craziness that she indulges in. And you've heard a lot about Sri Lanka. Well, she was directly responsible for the farming disaster that happened. She is directly responsible for the disaster that happened in Sri Lanka. And that is why, as far as I'm concerned, anything she has to say, you can just discount. You can absolutely discount completely. So that's it, So we're going to go diving into this, but hang on, we'll get this. Pretty Bird. You really don't understand this topic. It's painful to watch. GMOs do not increase crop yields by acre. They do, in a way, because it enables you to grow more often. And you can grow more in different climates. Look up golden rice. Golden rice is a perfect example. It's a type of rice that is filled with a new nutrient, because a lot of people in Africa do not get normal that stuff in their diets. So they developed a specific type of rice to be able to give people in Africa, especially in famine area regions, where they can have this rice and grow this rice themselves. That's the way. And Pretty Bird, you're wrong there. You're wrong there as well, right? GMO crops, if we crack GMO crops and we can do this right, we can actually reduce pesticide use, because we can make strains that then don't need as much pesticide. That's why we use GMOs. GMOs are not scary. This is one of the things I know a lot of you are probably freaking out about now. Going, oh my God, GMO. Don't worry about it, my friends, right? GMO, or genetic modification, is no more different to someone using a hammer, right? It's a tool, and it's a good tool that we should be looking at, using, and investing in. Genetic modification, if we are to be able to solve a lot of the food situations in this, genetic modification is the way to solve a lot of these problems. Now, are there things like regulations and things like that you can talk about? Yeah, absolutely. Mostly this stuff should be certainly regulated in some way. I agree with you on that. But to say that we should just completely shut the doors on GMO, like completely, and not even consider this, I think that's completely wrong. Because if you say that, then every single thing from modern strawberries, even modern wheat, looks nothing to what it used to be. That is genetic modification, except that took centuries to do, where in a lab we can do it there and then. BHM, you confusing GMOs with traditional plant breeding. No, I'm not. That is exactly what GMO. What are you doing when you are breeding plants? You are looking for the traits and characteristics that you want to breed into the new species, into that new strain. Using genetic modification, you can do that in a lab. So it is exactly the same. Just one takes a lot longer than the other. That's the case. So let's go into this article then. So this again is from a guy called Miles Power. He's got a really good sort of YouTube channel. Go check it out later after this. It's very good. In fact, I think he's even done a video on the Sri Lanka situation. I don't know if he's released it yet or not. I know he said he was doing one, but I don't know if he's done one yet or not. So for decades now, we've been told by NGOs such as Greenpeace and well-meaning but uninformed celebrities like Mark Ruffalo that the threat to global food security herself, Vandana Shiva, that organic farming is more sustainable and produces comparable yields to conventional farming methods. We all, including myself, want this to be true. But deep down, we all know when we see the premium price tag on organic produce, that's it. That it's not. Sorry. The sad reality is that the organic movement is simply marketing disguised as a grassroots movement relying on and amplifying the ignorance of its own consumers. It survives by distorting science and promoting a false narrative that organic food is somehow safer or is more nutritional than conventional foods. That is not to say there is no shortage of problems associated with chemical-intensive large-scale agriculture, but the solution to these problems is not to take us back to the Dark Ages and for us to ignore all the advancements in technology that have taken us from the brink of starvation. Yeah, there are many among us who romanticize the archaic food production and yearn to return to a time before synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. The now former Sri Lankan president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, I think that's how you say it, has shown us what such a world would look like when he attempted to transition the country's farmers to organic agriculture. The result was an economic and humanitarian crisis in which Sri Lanka lost its food security and 500,000 people were pushed back into poverty. This was one of the many significant factors leading to the widespread protests in Sri Lanka, which the Rajapaksa administration attempted to suppress through authoritarian regimes, opposing curfews, restricting social media, assaulting protesters and journalists, and arresting online activists. They were, however, unsuccessful. At the time of writing this, Rajapaksa has fled to Singapore after protests overran the presidential palace. And Sri Lanka's Prime Minister, Ranjil, I don't even know how you say that, Riki Mashkin, I think I say it, was sworn in as an acting president as the country currently reels from an economic and crisis and unrest. So I hope you've got a bit of the background there to sort of what's going on. So, several months after forcing its farmers to go organic, the government reversed its decision and was seeking a $700 million US loan from the World Bank to revive its agricultural sector by providing it with imported agrochemicals following the catastrophe. This is the dark side of organic farming. The former army officer and now former Sri Lankan president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, was elected in 2019, largely his reputation for ruthless dynamism. For example, As Secretary of Defense in 2009, he brutally ended a long civil war against Tamil rebels. As an urban development secretary, he beautified cities by kicking thousands of people out of the slums. And prior to his presidency, he noted the growth of the Vyarja Maga movement, a movement comprised of academics, professionals, and entrepreneurs who demanded the return of organic farming. And sensing an opportunity to try and garner votes, he pledged to swiftly turn the country's over 2 million farmers to organic as part of his 2019 election campaign. It is speculated that Rajapaksa, who has no understanding of biology or even agriculture, aimed to transform the agricultural sector of Sri Lanka into a purely organic enterprise in the expectation that consumers would be willing to pay premium for its exports. Others believed that he simply wanted to save money on imports, despite him and his government knowing that organic farming could not feed the Sri Lankan population. Regardless, Rajapaksa's motives, it was the Navindam International, an Indian-based non-governmental organization, who advised him on how a switch could be accomplished. And unfortunately for the people of Sri Lanka, Navida International is a pseudo-environmentalist organization founded by conspiracy theorist and well-known persistent mythmonger Vandana Shiva. So Vanda is an Indian environmental activist and food sovereignty advocate who wags her finger at the Western economic models and institutions. She is known for her firebrand activism against modern agriculturalism, fetching her many awards from well-funded industrial nations, but also tones of criticism from those who suffer as a result of her actions. She and her organization, Nayavanda International, actively campaign to deny developing world farmers access to the modern techniques farmers in developed worlds have used to increase yields and profit while decreasing pesticide use. To do this, she perpetuates the myths about farmer suicide rates in India, fans the flames of anti-GMO hysteria, and downplays the impact of the Green Revolution, all whilst fetishizing archaic food production in the developing world, believing that villagers in rural India should remain as they are, as a showpiece, and be observed by the well-fed elite. India's own intelligence bureau, in a leaked classified report, raised concerns about Vanda's connections to foreign-funded NGOs, including Nayavada, who are actively hampering India's growth and development. So that's who she is. That's who she is. That's who this person is. That is who this person is actively promoting. She is promoting pulling developing countries and keeping them in archaic farming methods which do not produce the amount of yields and foods, essentially food security for their countries, which they need. So this is a serious problem. Now, unfortunately, as you saw there, this woman is given huge credos. So this is the crazy moment that this woman gets a lot of credo. But as we are about to see, she dives into so much conspiracy, so much stuff. It's unbelievable. And honestly, I do not think we have the full time to stop the video over and over again just to go how bad this is. Now, this is like I say, this is a full article, and it goes fully into all the stuff that she's done. And he's even written other articles like criticizing it. So I'm going to put this in chat because it's well worth a read. So it's well worth a read if you want to do that. Definitely worth a read. Again, if you are sort of interested in finding out more, like I say, Miles per Hour, very, very good. Been around on YouTube for quite some time, longer than me. But yeah, definitely worth checking out. Vid crew, greetings and salutations. So now we're going to go over to Brand. Because you are right, as someone's pointed out, Dream Dancer. Yeah, Russell Brand has given her a lot of publicity over the years. I think he's brought her up multiple times. I think this is actually the second interview I think he's done. Oh, hang on. He's actually done with her. So there we go. Let's fast forward this part.
Know what you think about this important video. Thank you.
Vandana Shiva, I'm so honored that you have joined us today.
I'm very happy to be here physically with you.
I feel like that you are one of the most important voices in the activist movement, and particularly with regard to the challenges we face with the ongoing rise of globalism and its observable consequences. I'd like to start off, if I may, by
okay, if one country cannot grow enough food to feed its population, what is the answer? Like, what is the answer? And I'll give you a hint. We're currently seeing this in Ukraine. Ukraine is the world's 5th largest. Oh, double audio from Brand. Is he loud? I'll tell you what. If that's going to be a problem, hold on. Oh god, I bet the mic's changed up, hasn't it? Hold on, let me check. Audio. Oh, it has as well. There we go. Thought so. There we go. Always hate it. Whenever I put these in, it always jumps straight over to the other microphone. But yeah. Ugh. Anyway, see, yeah, we've got the earphones in, so we shouldn't have that now. Oh, Page Mac Studios. What's the Great Reset? It's a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy theory. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, global trade. Yeah. Here's the thing. Global trade has helped out the world in so much better state than it used to be. Because here's the thing. You cannot grow, or well, at least you used not to be able to. Rubber is a perfect example. Where were all the rubber? Where was all the rubber grown originally in the world? It was all over in Southeast Asia. You know, it was all in Indonesia, Borneo. That's where all like the rubber used to be. So at one point, all the rubber had to come from that area. So if you wanted to sort of make rubber products, then you had to get it from there. If not, well, you're out of luck. And trade enabled that flow of rubber to come through. Now, of course, eventually, we developed, synthetic rubber, oil, of course, plastics, synthetic rubber. All that stuff came from, again, the need to have, again, more rubber. But world trade in particular with food, helping to solve food problems and crises. Again, look at Ukraine. Ukraine, the world's 5th largest grain producer. And you've heard all the stories recently coming about the problems, the fact that we've got all that grain stopped up in Ukraine, with Ukraine unable to export it, mainly to a lot of African countries. We're worried about a lot of famine happening in Africa. Because again, if you can't grow enough food, primarily because you don't have sort of these modern farming techniques in sort of large areas of your country, then of course this is going to be a problem. So you have to import your food. Now, of course, that obviously does have a knock-on effect environmentally, because you obviously have to transport, large volumes of grain. But in a way, that's sort of unavoidable, because I think you'd all agree, sending big shipments of grain around the world to places that are literally starving with famines, I think we'd all agree that's certainly needed. I don't even think Russell Brand would sort of disagree with that. Yeah. And again, we're a great example. You're actually a good point. We don't actually in the UK grow enough food to feed our population. We massively rely on food imports, not just grain, but various other things, other foodstuffs as well. So let's move on to this. Hold on, we'll just.
And particularly with regard to the challenges we face with the ongoing rise of globalism and its observable consequences, I'd like to start off, if I may, by asking you about the current Dutch agricultural protests. As a person that's only taken my information about this protest movement from the mainstream media, I would
okay. The Dutch protests that you've been seeing recently, I actually thought about covering this. Those of you who may remember a couple of was it last year? Was it last year where we had the big trucker protests in Canada? You may remember those trucker protests were under the guise of freedom, and we want our sort of freedom, guys. We want Trudeau to throw open this stuff and open the gates. But in reality, when you actually looked at it, who was behind these protests, who was running these protests, it turned out to be a very alt-right organization that were very, 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 very problematic, to say the least. So one of the bizarre things about the Netherlands protests, the farmers in the Netherlands were protesting that the Dutch government were essentially saying, okay, we want you to reduce your use of pesticides, but we also want to reduce, your numbers of cattle that you have, because again, one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases are cows. So they are very, very, so rightly so, I think, the farmers did sort of have a right to, sort of protest in a way. The problem being then became that the right wing got a hold of this, and a lot of conspiracy theorists got a hold of these protests and started infiltrating into these protests, and in some cases even took over control of these protests and turned it into, rather than, hey, we're Dutch farmers, we want to, make sure we're being looked after in a way, because it's sort of going to be, cost us a lot of money. You're going to be, you're going to be, killing, all these cows. We think it's wrong to sort of, you must only have, this set of limit of cows and no more type of thing. To being very, very anti-EU protests and all sorts of kind of crazy nonsense. And I sort of didn't cover it. I wish I did. I think it's still ongoing in some places, I believe. In the Netherlands, like I say, I'm sure someone from the Netherlands in chat will probably correct me on that. Yeah, Alex, yeah, you are right. Yeah, the freedom convoys in Canada were only in February. Yeah, seems a lot longer than that. It seems a lot longer than that, to be honest. Yep. Tom, I'm guessing you're from there. So yeah, yes, it's ongoing. Yeah. So yeah, these protests have been massively hijacked by the right wing, and again are not going to be covering some of this stuff. So it's yeah. So Russell Brand again giving in to sort of, well, maybe not initially, but we'll see how this goes.
I would see this issue seems to have been framed as, well, there are new ecological regulations that need to be introduced to prevent Dutch farmers irresponsibly using harmful toxic fertilizers, and that their protests have been framed very negatively by the media. Can you tell me, is there a different perspective on that?
Yes, they were framed very negatively because they became, as I think it was Tom said in chat, they've been taken over by a lot of crazy right wingers and conspiracy theories. So of course they're being betrayed really badly. What do you think's going to happen?
That you could share.
Well, there are many different ways of looking at and responding to the crisis we face. We do face a serious crisis caused by industrial agriculture. 50% greenhouse gases come from farming with fossil fuels and chemicals.
Okay, think of what she just said there. 50% of greenhouse gases come from farming with chemicals. Again, not an expert, but I'm willing to think that is wrong, because I do not see how you can get chemicals become sort of greenhouse gases. We just mentioned earlier the whole thing with cows. There's a case. Cows produce methane, hence, they are sort of a problem. But again, that is not to do with sort of industrial farming. Oh, thank you very much, Veet Crew. In Holland, the protest belongs to democracy. Right. So yeah, making fertilizer creates CO2. Yeah, I'll certainly give you that. But what she said there was that it is farming using those chemicals that create CO2. Citation needed.
And shifting food long distance, transforming it with ultra processing.
Again, because we live in a very globalized world, you are not going to get all of a sudden rid of international trade. Long distance trade is going to be a permanent thing. You can't get rid of that. And again, sending food, to areas and places that need food, I think we can all agree that's a good thing. I think we can all agree that's a good thing.
And greenhouse gases come from farming with fossil fuels and chemicals, and shifting food long distance, transforming it with ultra processing, packaging it. All of
Transforming it with ultra processing. I don't think food transforms that much, and I'm interested to what she says by the word transform. You may remember, just as we went over that brief blog, as they said there, look, you take a, let's say an organic apple and a non-organic apple, they are both the same. It's just one costs a bit more because the organic sort of section of the world has been sort of taken over by very much a marketing ploy to sort of do that.
of this has added up to greenhouse gases. But that same system that is punishing the farmer is as punishing the earth and is punishing the consumers through disease. When did it start? The chemical fertilizers are a byproduct of Hitler's regime. The IG Farben.
Whoa. Chemical fertilizers are a part of Hitler's regime. I think we're going to fact check that. Let's see. When were chemical fertilizers invented? Here we are. The first synthetic N fertilizer was calcium nitrate, made back in 1903 from nitric acid produced by an electric arc process. The availability of synthetic ammonia after 1913 led to many new fertilizers, but the physical quality was poor. So, nowhere near when it was created. So again, that is a scarce story. I hope you're realizing, just as we went through that article in the first place, she is scaremongering, trying to scare people. Oh, fertilizers with the creation of Hitler's regime. Ooh. You can see what it means. Oh, and we've got another one here. Who invented the first chemical fertilizer? The first artificial fertilizer was superphosphate, invented by the English agricultural chemist John Maynard Laws in 1842. He patented a process by treating phosphate rock with sulfuric acid to make phosphate soluble, thus initiating the chemical fertilizer industry. So it's even older than 1903. So we've got here the first fertilizer made in 1842 in England. So fertilizers, or at least these, the artificial fertilizers, which we have such a problem against, not even connected. Why is she doing that? Because she wants to scare people. This is part of the tactic that, unfortunately, people like this fall for. You may remember at the beginning where I said, oh, people are all scared of, Franken foods, of, scientists have created a glow-in-the-dark apple. They've gone too far. The madmen. That happens incredibly rarely. And I'd be in favor of sort of regulation, but at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure you would leave it up to scientists, not as this person is, who is, I think she has a philosophy degree, but I think she claims to have a science one, but there's no evidence that she has a science degree. It certainly comes from certainly a philosophy degree. So make of that, once again, what you will. So yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to read through your chat now. I see we've got a couple of gardeners in chat. And see, here's the thing, agriculture is massively important. And I think people underestimate just how important agriculture is. And is agriculture now perfect? Don't get me wrong, there are probably problems, but like I say, I'm not an expert in agriculture. But there are places to have, where you can have discussions about, agriculture where there are problems. And I guarantee you there are solutions. And as always, you look at the history of agriculture, very often the solution to a lot of these agricultural problems has been science. It was the creation of, artificial fertilizers, which increased crop yields, which made crops more consistent when they were able to be grown. You look at the amount of famines that used to happen in the Middle Ages because of failing crops, because we didn't have this stuff. So much, science saving people's lives here in agriculture. And this is why I am very sort of pro GMO. And I really do worry about the fact that people are so terrified of sort of GMO. The very word of it sends shivers down the people's down the shivers of people's spine. And I'm pretty sure in chat there are people going, "Oh my god, he said GMO." Yeah, look, let the scientists get on with it. If we need to regulate it, let's bring some scientists into Parliament. Let them say, this is what we need. Let the scientists lead the discussion. Let them say, this is what, needs to be regulated, etc., etc. Job done. But unfortunately, a lot of people would rather believe this woman who, as we said at the beginning, is responsible for the farming disaster that took place in Sri Lanka. She is directly responsible. Oh. Yeah, but BHM scientists are experts. We don't listen to them, apparently. Yeah, very, very, very true. Very, very true.
Group of cartel of corporations combined with Standard Oil of the US use fossil fuel product of Hitler's regime. The IG Farben group of cartel of corporations combined with Standard Oil of the US use fossil fuels to fix atmospheric nitrogen by burning fossil fuels at very high temperature. Now, there are better ways to fix nitrogen, and that is, well, let the earthworms give you 40 kilograms per hectare. Let the
again, if you were a farmer, or like I say, we've got a couple of gardeners in chat. you know, if you were a gardener and you wanted to grow some food, some vegetables, grow a little bit of extra food, why not? And you wanted to use, earthworms. As C just said, oh yeah, earthworms help with nitrogen. Thing is, though, if what she's saying is true, then there should have never, ever, in the history of the world, ever have been any famines, because according to her, these natural organic methods of farming in the past were perfect. Again, look back through history. Just look back through history. Look at the amount of famines that we had, and then you start to get sort of the marriage of sort of science and agriculture, and the creation of sort of machines, to sort of help work the land, to sort of the seed till, to once that starts, famines, especially sort of in the West, become less, and you start to see more food production being grown, because why? Populations increase. So not only that, but you need to bring in more food. So this is where you get countries following those new agricultural techniques, now growing big surpluses. One of the first big exports from America was wheat and corn, along with cotton and tobacco. And there was a massive worry in Europe that the American farmer would put British farmers, French farmers, Spanish farmers, etc., out of business, because they were following these agricultural techniques over in America and growing vast amounts of sort of wheat and grain, and then transporting it over and selling it in Europe. That was an actual physical problem back in the 18 and late 1700s. Massive problem for Europeans at that time. Very, very much sort of early industrial period, but they're still very, very much in sort of an agricultural economy that Europe was. But even then, there were still famines. Crops still failed. And, why on earth, if these organic methods are so useful and so popular, why are there still famines in places like Africa, where they don't have these modern farming methods, modern farming techniques? How are they why are they still having these famines? Why are they still experiencing this problem? Yeah, isn't that exactly the problem now with the capitulations or the capitulations signed into Australia and New Zealand, destroying the UK farming? Yes, they are.
The soil micro fossil fuels at very high temperature. Now, there are better ways to fix nitrogen, and that is, well, let the earthworms give you 40 kilograms per hectare. Let the soil mycorrhiza work. So what's happened is the same people who are pushing a very anti-nature, anti-people, anti-life globalization agenda shaped a system that has caused a problem, forced the farmers into that system to use chemical fertilizers to get the cows off the
no one, there is, I guarantee she would not have any evidence if she's actually challenged on this. There is no evidence that people were forcing people. There was no evidence that people were forcing people, or at least forcing farmers, into using chemical fertilizers. Why did farmers start using chemical fertilizers? Because it made their crops grow more easily. They were able to get a better yield by using these. I think that should be obvious, you know. I think, you know. But yeah. Oh, Chthonic. Ahoy, ahoy there. No, never mind. You're never too late. You're never too late, Chthonic.
Force the farmers into that system to use chemical fertilizers to get the cows off the grass and into factory farms, then feed them with GMO soya that's chopping down the Amazon. 40% of soy.
So, okay, this is where, and I think we've talked about this before, where conspiracy crosses over with actual legitimate concerns. Because one of the big reasons for deforestation, especially in the Amazon, is for, you know, animal farming, namely for cows. So that is true. But they didn't force, you know, cows off the grass into factory farming. Factory farming is a result to meet a need. Because guess what? We consume. You know, we need food to live, you know. And we need to sort of fulfill that need. So there is, like it or not, always going to be a need for some sort of factory farming. Oh, Mithril. I believe she is perfectly confusing fertilizers with artificial pesticides, which have been incredibly detrimental to the environment. I don't think she is, Mithril. She's really not. This, again, I'll remind you all, Vandana Shiva wants to take people back to pre-agricultural revolution methods of farming, meaning no pesticides, no fertilizer. As you just heard us say, you don't need fertilizer, just use worms. And as we said a few moments ago, if these methods of organic farming are work so well, why did we transition over in the first place to these modern farming methods? And why do we see these methods which she so champions, first of all, fail massively in Sri Lanka? And why do we see them fail around the world of countries that are not developed that still use these methods? So look for an article called Indian Farmers Hostage to Middlemen. Oh, hang on. I'm going to share a link with you because, again, Vandana Shiva shares the myth, and it is a myth, that Monsanto is somehow responsible for Indian farmers' suicides. Again, it's not true. Let me just put the link to you. Let me find it. Here we are. Yep. Myths about farmer suicide rate. Hang on. Oh, pressed the wrong button. God damn it. So here you have here, because I'm putting this to a stop right now, because again, this is one thing that she perpetuates. Again, GMO Indian farmers' suicide rates. Again, that's just wrong. Doesn't address the real reason that happens. Oh, Monsanto sells seeds to Indian farmers that can be planted and harvested, but the seeds cannot be planted again since they won't grow. So they need to be rice seeds next year. Why did Monsanto, by the way, put in seeds that can only do that? By the way, is it because that people like Vandana Shiva for years asked Monsanto not to create variations or at least GMO foods that can reproduce, so hence they only make them like that? So yeah, that will also, by the way, this will also address that as well in that article. Like I say, those suicide rates are largely a myth. And like I say, Monsanto tends to be the whipping boy for a lot of anti-GMO activists stuff. Are Monsanto a perfect company? No, not by a long shot. Most corporations aren't, let's face it. But ultimately responsible? Not really. And those farmers, by the way, knew what they were signing up to in those contracts. So yeah.
Soya goes for animal feed. Another 40% goes for biofuel. It's not feeding the world. All of this was forced on people through regulation. It was forced through subsidies. 50% of the European tax money was going to create this kind of agriculture.
Citation needed. I don't know whether you can prove that or not, but I definitely think that is false. 50% does not certainly go to that. I think you'll find that most countries' welfare is that tends to be the highest spend, probably next to sort of health next. So yeah, 50%. I don't think so, Vandana Shiva. I don't think so at all.
Now, the same people who caused the problem are saying, farmers, you're responsible. It's a bit like saying to a person who went obese because of junk food, to say you are responsible. No, the junk food industry is responsible. The Pepsis and the Cokes are responsible. The fertilizer, these are identifiable players. And there's a...
But who uses that stuff? It's the farmers. So eventually it is the farmers who are responsible for that stuff.
principle of justice called polluter pays. The original cause of pollution is the manufacturers and the governments who subsidize it, and the governments that promoted the false idea that without chemicals you can't grow food, and billionaires today who are promoting that same false idea, Bill Gates.
No, I think it's very, very well established that farmers do even need, you know, these modern chemicals, these modern, you know, stuff to help them grow that. I think that has been well documented, very well documented. But again, there's a reason why this woman doesn't debate agricultural scientists, because that's something else I found out. She refuses to engage with people. In fact, the closest she ever came, apparently, when I looked this up, she was going to do a debate with this. I think he was a scientist in America who was in agriculture, but found out that he didn't actually write a paper for Monsanto. One of his papers that he wrote was cited in research by a Monsanto researcher that ended up in a paper, and she refused to debate him because apparently she doesn't want to debate people who have worked for Monsanto, even though he never worked for Monsanto. He was, again, an agricultural scientist who did research, and someone who worked for Monsanto cited one of the papers, you know, like scientists do. So yeah, go figure.
So there are huge numbers of alternatives, but farmers need to be given a 5 to 10 year period of transition, and the structures that were created to promote chemicals should be used to promote ecological agriculture.
Yeah, exactly, Sonic. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, this is one of the problems with someone like her. Like, I'm not an expert in sort of these fields, and I guarantee if you had an expert, they'd be literally stopping every single moment, pointing out why she's wrong. I guarantee for every point that we've tried to address, there's probably like 5 or 6 things that have just slipped through underneath my radar because I'm not all that knowledgeable about that stuff. To, you know, I'm not an agricultural scientist at the end of the day, to be able to tell you that. Yeah, mithril. Yeah, you can grow food without chemicals. However, there are externalities that need to be applied as well. Whether there would be food enough to satisfy human requirements, again, it's highly arguable. Again, this is why we need, pesticides, fertilizer. You know, modern farming has very, very much proven its case and its, you know, use. Yes, of course, there are chemicals that do damage, you know, the environment. And what do? Well, easy. We put a ban on them. We stop using them, and we develop new ones to perform those same functions. Or you use GMO, you use genetic modification. So now you can have a strain of wheat that is sort of more resistant to certain types of viruses and viruses that are sort of and bacteria that affects them, so that are more resistant to it. So then you don't need to use those types of fertilizer.
You need new research, you need new schools, and you definitely cannot punish the victim. Farmers are a victim of this system.
So these are systemic problems that have complex origins that even include that great moniker of 20th century evil, the Nazi Party. But at the point that we hear about it, it is...
No, Russell. No. Again, what did I say about that Nazi talking point? That is used explicitly to scare people. It's a scare tactic. and Russell Brand is just engaged in that as well. We've been through there. What was it? The earliest fertilizer we had. What was it? 1842 by a guy in England, and created the first artificial sort of fertilizer.
Reductively conveyed as an issue that for which the agricultural industry in the hands of individual farmers is what's culpable. It's so interesting the way that information is rendered. And also, Vandana, sometimes I have to marvel almost at the mendacity of a system that can create problems, present solutions, and at every step of the way, it's to the ongoing advantage of centralized financial and sometimes state powers, and to the continuing disadvantage of us as individuals and as the inhabitants and partners of the planet. It's extraordinary to me. Sometimes it's because
God, could you imagine for a second having a conversation with Russell Brand and trying to decode his word salad? Honestly, that's such a mismatch of words put together. I mean, that's certainly a sentence he said there, but trying to dissect what he said there, something to do with, these evil corporations setting up a system that somehow benefits government and big business. It's almost as if, people respond to needs and create businesses to advise that need. I mean, one of the things he said there was regulation, but we in the sort of the UK and in the EU, we have regulations against, chemicals, against certain chemicals. So is the government good or bad? I don't know. I generally don't know at this point where he is, where he comes down on that.
Because some of the connections that you have just made in answering that question are difficult to make, and sometimes it's because those stories are simply never told. So in short, you're saying that really we should be
or just scaremongering,
supporting those farmers and recognizing how this admittedly ecologically difficult practice came about.
Absolutely. And I think we definitely need to see the world that the greedy want to create. All of natural resources in their hands, all of land in their hands.
This is again going into conspiracy theory. Now, I'll agree that, there are, rich and greedy people out there that do want to sort of have monopoly on a resource, but that's not exactly a new thing, But you see what we said about, this is the sort of the intersection between people like what Russell Brand like to try and do. They like to intersect, a bit of conspiracy with a bit of truth, and then they cross together. And then this is how you get people hooked in, because people will sort of recognize that greed argument, and then they'll go, yes, modern agricultural is bad. And you see the road that people end up traveling down.
The same billionaires who are telling the farmers, forget the land, take money and leave it, want that land. The same people who say, oh, food is unnecessary, we're going to make lab food, are the very people who are then,
what? What? We don't need food, and then go and make oh my God. Why is this woman taken seriously? I have never ever heard an argument come forward of someone say, we don't need food. This is This is crazy. This is why I've sort of really worried about doing this video, because honestly, you need to be sort of an expert in, like, you know, several different things just to be able to, like, you argue against her and push back against the crazy rhetoric that she's putting out. And here's the thing, lab grown meat, that's actually a good thing. You know, you want to cut down on people cutting down the rainforest for, again, meat, mostly cows and cattle. You want to reduce the number of cows and cattle. Lab grown meat's an answer. Why not? You know, it's an answer, and we're getting there. We're certainly getting there to that point. I don't know who this woman is. Does she have any credentials to back up her ideas? No, she has a degree in philosophy, although from what I've, again, learnt, she claims to have one in physics, but there's no evidence that she has such a degree. So yeah.
Also investing in land to have real food. It's the ultimate colonization that's happening, and it's condensing everything that's gone wrong. In my view, the witch hunts were really killing those people who lived and taught the life that we are part of nature. The witches were teachers of oneness with nature. They were the ones who were hunted down. And that, for a century or 2 centuries, 9 million people killed in Europe. It was a killing of the ecological mind. The colonial.
So apparently the witch hunts were responsible because they were really early versions of ecologists, and the people were hunting them down. What on earth? What on earth? Yeah. I generally just don't know where to start with that. I really don't.
And people killed in Europe. It was a killing of the ecological mind. The colonialism, then the chemical agriculture from Hitler's Germany.
Again, did not come from Hitler's Germany. We've just looked it up. The first person to create, again, artificial fertilizer was a guy from the UK. He was an agricultural scientist, created in 1840 something, I think it was. Didn't come from Hitler's Germany. Again, this is fear mongering. And you'll notice, as we've said, that very, very clever intersection that these people like to do. They like to tell a bit of truth, and then they like to work a bit of fear and mythology and, you know, conspiracy into it together. Because, as we said, people will agree, you know, oh, these rich, greedy people coming after, you know, to buy the land. And then, of course, they eventually end up going down the road of, well, we all need to go to full agricultural farming, back to full organic farming. We need to abandon all modern farming techniques. You know, farmers destroy your tractors, you know, sell it in, buy a horse and plow. And by the way, that is one thing that she does actually believe the farmers should abandon their combine harvesters and modern farming tools and re-pick up, you know, horse and plows and shovels and scythes. So yeah.
New GMO push, the earlier push, the new push. All of this is combining to say we will disenfranchise you. We will not let you make your living. We will not let you have a livelihood, because with the earth, with her animals, with her trees, we can create life. The fact that people are marching in every country on cost of living should become a deeper question. The right to live.
When so many powerful forces
going back to this vision of agriculture that she wants, and to be honest, I'm done with this video. To be honest, she's absolute. She's even worse than I thought. She's even worse than I thought she was. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Going back to that form of agricultural dream that she seems to want to go back to wouldn't solve the cost of living crisis. It would exacerbate the cost of living crisis. Organic farming cannot produce the same amount of food that modern farming techniques can. You know, end of story. If her farming techniques are so good, why did we move away from them in the first place? Now she'll say, oh, they were forced away from those techniques. By who? What for? Why did farmers make that decision to move away from this type of stuff? You know, this goes so crazy. And the thing is, at the start, for those who came in late, this woman, by the way, Vandana Shiva, is responsible. She's the one who pushed the nonsense that ended up causing the farming disaster in Sri Lanka. Of the government saying, you know what, okay, we're going to go to organic farming methods. What happened in Sri Lanka? A massive farming disaster. That's who was that woman, Vandana Shiva. Hang on, let me go to, let's get a picture of it there. She is responsible for that. That is her fault. She's a complete crackpot, lunatic, who unfortunately has a lot of power and influence that is very, very undeserved and, well, has caused the deaths of thousands of people due to famine. And unfortunately, people like Russell Brand, of course, buy into it. It's perfectly on brand, of course, for Russell Brand to have someone like this bringing them into this show. Don't worry, we won't be doing this type of stuff so often. Like I say, this isn't my wheelhouse, but certainly something that I really wanted to cover today because honestly, this woman gets a lot of very undue credit, and I think it's very worth pointing out. She's the main reason for the farming disaster that was caused in Sri Lanka. She's an absolute crackpot. She generates myths about GMOs that are sort of not true. She crosses the line between sort of telling half truths and then mixing in huge conspiracy about it. This woman is dangerous. She's absolutely dangerous. And unfortunately, she has a lot of influence. And she's out there perpetuating all this crazy stuff. Just look at the fact that she says that fertilizers were created by Hitler's government. A simple Google search will prove you otherwise. Yeah, regenerate. Yeah, she's just like Nigel. Yeah, she's just like Nigel. Just like Nigel. Yeah. Think of her as if Nigel Farage was like an eco warrior. This is her. Yeah. This is just the Pol Pot economics. This is just Pol Pot economics. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely insane, crazy woman. We'd like to say this is something that I just wanted to cover today. Like I say, we will be going back to sort of politics. Obviously, the Tory leadership contest is ongoing. Certainly had fun and games last night with the presenter fainting right halfway through the session. That was quite an experience. And the thing is, though, I didn't watch it live because honestly, I watched the first one on Monday and I thought, I'm not going to watch this one live. I'm going to just wait and hold off it. I'm just going to wait. And I missed out on it, all the fun, but never mind. So yeah, like I say, we will go back to sort of covering British politics as we always do. That's what we do. Normally on this channel, like I say, I just felt that I really had to sort of cover just how dangerous this woman is and sort of really bring attention just to how what a crackpot lunatic she really is, and she's dangerous. She really is. The stuff that she's spouting is very, very dangerous. So as always, thank you once again for you all joining me this evening. Like I say, please do remember to hit that like and share button on your way out. And of course, down below, there is a Patreon page, my one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And there's also the YouTube subscriptions button. See, this is where I need to get a nose hair trimmer. If you've noticed, I've started doing that recently. It's because, again, I keep on having nose hair. It keeps on tickling me. So I need to buy a nose hair trim and start trimming my nose hairs because I can feel it tickling my nose. So yeah, as always, thank you very much for all those people. Like I say, thank you very much to people who've sent super chats in during the live stream today. We will be live again on Saturday morning at around about 8 o'clock for the Good Morning Walk. So come join us again live for that. And of course, watch out for the other videos we've got coming out this week. We've got a video about a wine exporter. Thank you very much to, I can't remember who sent me that article now. Sorry, I've forgotten your name off the top of my head. But yeah, we're doing that article that's coming out tomorrow about that. And of course, we've got some more interesting news about Brexit coming along as well. So, as always, thank you very much to coming along. Please do remember to leave a comment after the live stream's over. It helps with the algorithm stuff. But yeah, like I say, thank you always very much for coming and joining us this evening. Watch out for the other stuff. Do all the sort of stuff you need to do and whatnot. And we'll see you all very soon next time. Oh, hang on. I'm going to press the end button this time. So, as always, we'll see